Hi guys, it's Tara Lucke here and welcome to our weekly Thursday live. I'm just waiting for our guest Nicole Aghabi to jump on, so bear with me while I get Nicole on board. Hi Michael, hello Andrew, thank you so much for watching today and joining. And I just have to say, I say this every week, but I'm totally stoked at how awesome everyone is being in the group, the questions that are coming up, and how helpful everyone is being. This just so inspiring, and I'm learning so much new stuff, and I hope you guys all are too. So thank you for your contribution in the group. It's just amazing to see. Now, let me see if I can press some buttons and get Nicole in here. How's everyone's day going? Guys, I'm still tracking down Nicole, so just bear with me before we get into the juicy stuff. Here we go.
Hello.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. Oh, that's a nice background.
Yes, it is. That's the city of Sydney behind me.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah, it's nice where we are.
And
How's
I can
everything
hear
going?
you loud and clear. And it
Perfect.
sounds like I'm not getting an echo, which is great. I think the headphones solved it.
I can hear you better. I've got my AirPods in, so if you can hear me well, that's fantastic.
You're so fancy with your AirPods.
Well, as a former Apple employee, I have to promote them somehow. So
Okay, well, I think that's a great start because Nicole, you've got such a diverse background for a lawyer. Like,
yeah.
you want to step us through that? Like, how did you work at Apple as well as being a scientist?
Oh well, that's all to do with law, actually. Not to do with law. The law is the reason, but basically from start to finish, and I'll try to do it as quick as I can. I did a Bachelor of Science, and I started in forensic science, working mainly in the sexual assault lab. Because like my major was DNA and things like that. And then I went from, sad times to some good times. So I moved into IVF and wanted to try to get away from the embryo lab because working with the mothers is a little bit, they're pumped full of hormones and I couldn't deal with that. So I was on the male side of IVF, see. So,
yes.
it might be terrible to say this live on Facebook, but my nickname at the IVF lab was the Sperm Queen because I was I was in andrology. So, no, but it was really good there and learned quite a lot. And then I got involved in law and coincidentally at the same time, the laws changed in terms of the donors. So I was working with IVF Australia and they asked me to update all their policies and procedures, which was really, really good experience in terms of law. Did that, left IVF to pursue a career in law. And then I did things like debt recovery and medical negligence, and I didn't like it, but I really love property and estates. But I went back to IVF Australia saying, I miss it. How can I be involved? So now I sit on the ethics committee of IVF Australia as their chairperson. So that's how I got involved with that. How Apple came into it is because I had a lot of difficulty with law jobs. I say it as it is, and if I don't like something, I tell my boss I don't like it. So Admittedly, I've been fired a number of times for having too much ethics. So I suffered a lot in terms of work. So I went and worked at Apple in the store. So, and that was just amazing. Yeah.
Wow. I love that you have such a diverse background. And so tell me now, you're running your own practice in Sydney?
Yes. So here in the Sutherland Shire in Miranda, and another reason why there's another story with that, why I've opened up so quickly after graduating is I'm a carer for my mother, so I need to be having, whatever hours I need. So that's the reason why I've opened up on my own. Yeah.
Good. That's so inspiring, Nicole. And I love that you're just backing yourself and, creating the role and the job for you. That's one of the reasons why I work for myself as well, in terms of needing flexibility and not finding that in a traditional firm and just going, stuff it, I'm just going to do my own thing. So I hear you.
Yeah. I think we need to back ourselves more, and you suffer a lot for it. Like right now, I'm not paying myself, so you do suffer a lot for it. But I'm pretty sure it'll be quite fruitful at the end. And the biggest issue for me was it's not working for someone, but it's the whole legal arena of those ridiculously long hours, no balance, even though they promote work-life balance. There is none, and it's nothing I would tolerate, and I'll tell people to their face if I don't like something. So,
yeah. Well, we probably should have a chat about that as well, because that could be a whole live about, creating your ideal law life. So, and in your practice, so you do property and estate planning as your core areas?
More like wills and power of attorney and injury and guardianship. I'm still focusing on I'm just doing the basics of estate planning, not the fine detail as yet. I'm doing my master's in property at the moment, which finishes February next year, and then I'll be doing the masters all over again, majoring in wills and estates and estate planning.
Wow. Okay. And so what we wanted to talk about today is the intersection between reproduction technology, I suppose, and the impact on estate planning, because that, it's fascinating. Not many lawyers, including myself, are up to speed with the processes and then the impact that can have on an estate plan. And I wanted to leverage your knowledge and direct experience in the science industry to sort of talk about, as lawyers and even just, and for the financial planners and accountants, what issues we need to bear in mind when these are coming up for our clients. So I've got some questions for you, but if there were particular aspects that you wanted to touch on, I'm happy to just give you the mic.
There was. I'll go through your questions, but I actually wrote some things down, and silly enough, I didn't get the notes out, so I'll just get that out now. But what did you want to go over?
Okay, well, and I know it is going to change state by state, but, we've got this concept of issue and children that filters through into entitlements under intestacy laws and, eligibility to bring family provision applications. And, in terms of the surrogacy arrangements, to me, that creates a whole host of issues around, for example, and I don't know if I'm using the right words, but, a sperm donor in the surrogacy process, would the child born out of that process be a child of the sperm donor and entitled to challenge, or entitled on intestacy? Those kinds of issues just blow my mind.
Yeah. So basically, when we think of surrogacy, a child born of surrogacy, a child born to a birth mother is the child, legal child of that birth mother, and the birth mother is the legal parent of that child. So we need to have surrogacy arrangements. I'm talking in general in New South Wales, but it's pretty much the same over the country. When we have the surrogacy arrangement, it shows what the intentions are and that there are intended parents, and most of the time that child is going to be the genetic child of the intended parents. But legally, it's not their child. So we use the arrangement document as evidence of intention. There's no agreement you can have in place that can force a surrogate to give up that child, but especially because we do it altruistically here, it's not permitted to do it commercially. Because it's altruistically, it's unlikely you're going to have a surrogate who wants to keep the child. So, and that's a big issue for intended parents. The problem that is more likely is the parents don't want the child, rather than the surrogate wanting to keep the child. So it's but it's not a common thing. But anyway, so we use that document to show what the intentions were, and as long as that document's in place, then you have the parentage order. Don't get confused with parenting, which is like custody. The parentage order to say who is the legal parent of that child, and then it works just like an adoption case. So it's exactly the same way. Unless the parentage has transferred to the intended parents, the child would not be able to claim under the Succession Act because they're not the legal child. And the child would be able to claim under the birth mother. So that's why it's really important to have the parentage in place. Before the parentage comes into place, I do suggest to the clients to have a will. Basically, if it's the surrogate saying, this is the reason why the child's not entitled, and if it's the intended parents, to actually bring the child in because it's legally not their child.
Yeah. Okay, so if we if clients present and they have been involved in an arrangement like this, the onus is on us as advisors to say, well, have you been through getting the parentage order and document it properly? Because do you see that people do this informally?
The surrogacy,
Well, and I guess I should say, in terms of surrogacy, so there's a couple of there's like versions of that, right? There's like they get a different woman to carry the baby, but also what about like say same-sex females and they just get a sperm donor or something and do it kind of informally?
That's more under donations. So when it comes to sperm donors or egg donors or embryo donors, they're giving up the right at the time of donating, and so there are no entitlements from the get-go. The reason surrogacy is different is because she's giving birth to the child. Yes. So when it comes to donations, they give up the right from the get-go. But with the reforms of the donations, is what used to be anonymous and the child could not find out who their parent was, now it's de-identified, which means it can be one day identified when the child is 18, and everything goes on a register to say who the legal, not who the legal parent is, who the biological parent is. So when it comes to donations, we don't have this issue. It's just when it comes to surrogacy. Surrogacy is for heterosexual couples who have fertility issues. They'll often use their own gametes, which is egg and sperm, or they might use a donor egg or donor sperm or a donor embryo. It's for same-sex male couples. They've got their social reason why they can't bear a child themselves. And they will usually use a surrogate to do that. As for same-sex females, it's not so common because to be able to use surrogacy for same-sex females, they need to both have reasons why they cannot bear a child. So, but when it comes to surrogacy, then it splits in further. You've got traditional surrogacy where the surrogate is carrying her own baby for someone, so it's her genetics, or gestational surrogacy. So she's carrying a baby that is not hers, if that makes sense.
Yes. Okay. Wow. And thank you for clearing up that point about the donation, because I was getting confused about that. So donation is fine. So then IVF is fine in the sense that drafting a will, defining beneficiaries as child, that IVF baby is totally a child, no issue there.
Yeah, because she's giving birth to the child herself.
Yes, okay. But surrogacy, when another mother gives birth, they really need that parentage order.
Well, see, the parentage order can be made 30 days to, I think it's 30 days after the child's born. So there is a period in between. So that's why it's important to have a will in place covering that period, and then you can change it again afterwards. Yeah. And it's pretty clear in the Act. The Act is it's small. You can read it within an hour. It's very clear as well.
And what Act is that?
The Surrogacy Act.
Okay, got it.
So it's going to be different across the states, but it's pretty much quite similar. There's just a few differences. Yeah. But the other thing that estate planners and people drafting wills and that should probably turn their mind to is, do you have embryos in storage? That's another thing. Are you donating your embryos? Things like that. Who can use it? Who can't use it? What happens if your partner passes away? So these are other things we need to turn our mind to, which is actually something I wanted to talk about, if that's so. Can we
please?
Go on to that?
Yes.
So this is the case of Jocelyn Edwards. Read the estate of the late Mark Edwards, and this was in 2011 in the New South Wales Supreme Court. So basically, I was actually involved with this one. Obviously, we couldn't talk about it at the time, but now it's a published legal document. It's okay. I was in the andrology lab at the time, and I remember all these embryologists running in screaming and what's going on, and they're saying, oh my God, we have to extract sperm out of this deceased man. And I didn't, what's happening? Why is it such an issue? They said because the wife wants to use his sperm to have a baby, but he's passed away. He's not provided the consents to do so, but we have a court order to do it. I said, well, you've got a court order. You got to do it.
Wow.
So ethically, the embryologist had major issue with that. So I got involved with that, and on the male side of things, to freeze the sample. But basically the court said, look, extract it, because if it's too late, then you can't use it. Extract it, freeze it, and then we'll decide whether it can be used or not. But basically, this is her story. They were actually going through IVF already anyway. He had fallen sick with something and said to his wife, if I don't survive, I still want you to have our child. I think it was on the 5th of a month, 5th of a month.
Yeah.
I can't remember, 2010 or something. He said to her, he died. And on the 6th of that month was when they had the appointment to sign all the consents.
Oh my gosh.
So all this evidence came into play, and then the court ended up deciding that it was his intention, even though there was no consent in place, so that she could use the sample. Yeah. So it was it was interesting. It was funny to see that case that I'd worked on. So, yeah.
Wow. So the prior consent is really important. If we're faced with clients who want to keep that option open, then we need a written consent.
Oh, that's the IVF lab.
Yeah. So is that that's a consent from the lab or it's not a consent that we do?
No, it's not. It's why it ended up going to the court was because he hadn't actually signed the document.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but all the intentions were there.
So I have to say, I don't usually ask clients this, like if I've got a childless couple, I don't talk to them about this being an option or anything. Do you, now that you've sort of been through this process?
Yeah. So when people come in to do their wills, I start with a family tree, and because that's my background, I enjoy drawing pedigrees, and so I'll say to them, okay, without sounding insensitive, may I ask if this is your first marriage? Have you had any other people that you've been living with, de factos? Can I ask, are these children your own biological children? Do you have other children outside of this family dynamic? And then that will open up the question of IVF and things like that.
Yeah.
So I did have one woman say, yeah, I've got embryos in storage. I'll let my husband use it with a surrogate, but not with a new wife. So I had to be specific with how he could use it, and vice versa.
Okay. And where did you put those specific directions? In the will? Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's property.
Yeah.
Sad to say, but it is actually, and that was something that came out of Jocelyn's case. The issue considered was the extent of a proprietary right, not in the cadaver, because that's something that people think of. How do you bury a body? Whose responsibility is it? Does it go down to? So the same thing that they thought of, the proprietary right of a semen sample. Something that they had to think about, and they said the wife as executor, it's her property. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And so incapacity is an interesting scenario in terms of if like with, say, the client who had the embryos frozen, when she said, it's okay for him to have a child using those with a surrogate but not a new spouse, was that on incapacity too, or only if she died?
No, if she died, because it's in her will.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a document to say what he could do during her lifetime. It was to say what happens after her lifetime. And of course, on his will, he gave permission for her to use it for herself to carry.
Yeah.
Like to raise.
Yes. Yeah. It's fascinating, and I'm gonna update my processes so that where it's suitable.
Well, the thing is,
bring
a lot
it
of
out.
us don't think about it because it was never really something people spoke about openly, and it wasn't so much of a common thing. And this is the thing that's happening now in the ethics committee. Is when I joined, we had maybe 2 surrogacy cases a quarter, so 8 in a year. We got up to maybe 9 a quarter after a few years. So it just became almost a normal thing to do, and nothing to be ashamed of. And people are now starting to talk about it, which is fantastic. But when these matters are coming to us and they're standard, and it's the same thing over and over, I said to the medical director at the last meeting, we don't need to review these cases anymore for ethics. You need to give us the ones that you are concerned about ethically. I understand in the past because it wasn't standard, but now it is. So that's something that they're going to consider, not giving us so many surrogacy cases to look at.
Well, the Kardashian Wests have also done their bit for raising awareness around normalcy of surrogate arrangements. So
I kind of have a bit of issue when it comes to other countries, because especially in America, they allow commercial surrogacy. This is now going outside the scope of estate planning, but just lightly. Commercial surrogacy is, I've always said, actually an ABC reporter posed this question on a surrogacy forum I'm part of, pros and cons of commercial versus altruistic. And I said, with the commercial surrogacy, I ask myself, the Human Tissue Act says you're not supposed to get paid for donating any human tissue. You don't get paid for donating blood. If you ask yourself, would I do this if I wasn't getting paid? And if your answer is no, in my opinion, you shouldn't be doing it. So I'm not a fan of commercial surrogacy. And also the other aspect I turn my mind to is surrogacy trafficking. There's countries where they're locking women up in hotel rooms to bear children that they do not want to be carrying. So it is a pretty big issue.
Wow.
But again, that's not estate planning.
Yes. Okay. But I mean, I guess what I'm hearing is, say, if I get across my desk clients who are thinking about or in the middle of like a surrogacy arrangement, it is a specialized area, and it's a good idea to get someone like you involved to help inform how do we get the process right to protect everyone, and then also to inform the estate planning so that everyone's objectives are achieved, because there's a bit at play here.
Yeah. The other thing I'd probably raise, I've got so many notes here, so I'm kind of a bit lost what I wanted to talk about. But the other thing I did want to raise, there's the case that was just in June, and everyone's knowing about it. Mason and Parsons, the High Court decision. And there was a bit of a hoo-ha about that, saying, how can the High Court rule the sperm donor the father? I actually met the solicitor who worked on that matter. I don't know if she's part of your group or not, but she worked on this from the get-go. And what I understand is this fellow had considerable involvement in this child's life. So pretty much they were trying to achieve a child, him being a donor, but it was like all bets are off. He picked her up from school and she called him dad and things like that. So that's something else we need to be aware of. If there's a donor child, what is the contact? What's the arrangement that the child is having with the parent, if they're having any contact? So we do need to consider that, because the donor might fall into the category of parent.
Okay. So, and can you have an agreement? Can they get an order or something under the Family Law Act to clear that up without it going to court if everyone's in agreement?
Oh, I suppose that would come down to the parentage order. But as a donor, it's not that. You could have an order, but then you're changing the family dynamics, because the court is always going to look at what's the best interest of the child. You might have that court order, but do they have a relationship regardless? We all know court orders aren't the be-all, end-all. It's tricky like that, and that's why it's important to talk to our clients and understand what are the dynamics exactly. Tell me more. But so for that donor, if he did not want her to inherit, he would need to make that clear in his will, because he's now been declared the father, and that daughter is entitled to claim under his estate.
I did see that decision, but I didn't read it very closely. So he was making the application to be declared as a father, or? I
don't think the idea was call me father. It was simply because the two women, the two mothers, wanted to move to New Zealand. So basically it meant that he wasn't going to have access to her anymore. And from their point of view, you're not entitled to have access because you're just the donor. And that's when he came and said, actually, I am more than that. That was our original arrangement, but it's more than that.
Yeah. So the presumption is the donor is not a parent, but it can be displaced by the facts, which is always the case in law. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, please go. Please continue.
I was just going to say, I just wanted to see what, there was something else I wanted to have.
while you're having a look through that, I mean, to me, I feel like the main lesson is just like the takeaways that I've got for myself is to just, do a bit more investigation up front for, demographic clients where this is something that could be relevant and ask the questions to try and lead this out. And then if it is sort of relevant, I'll definitely be getting someone like you involved to help just make sure that, we get all the right arrangements in place and consents reflected in the documentation, or if they need to go off and get orders or a formal agreement, that we do that. Because, I mean, the last thing is, I can't imagine the stress of an urgent court application about, whether you can harvest the sperm or not at the last minute, like just trying to keep our clients out of that situation is the ultimate goal. So doing as much planning and agreements in advance. So
see, the thing is, when it comes to this sort of thing, they're often going to go speak to family lawyers. So family lawyers have marked their territory in surrogacy law. And I'm sort of sitting there going, all right, fair enough, there's a lot of family law involved. But I do think estate lawyers need to get involved in this area too, because there's actually more estate dynamics involved than there is family. So I think there's more crossover there than family lawyers realise. But actually,
I ignore. I'd go, oh, that's the family lawyer's domain, so I don't have to worry about it. But I don't think that's the right approach.
It's not, because a lot of them, if they're practicing in both areas, fantastic. But if they're purely family and not across this state, they're not going to give the right advice. So they really need to come into the estate side, and the estate side needs to come into the family side when it comes to that. But what I did want to say, raise issue as well, take note of, is also if someone has a surrogate child born overseas, it might be the case or might not be the case, depending on what's happened. The child's come back and is not the legal child. So that's something else to be aware of. I know of a number of couples who've gone over to America, have their child, and they've got the child here with them. And to do anything, they have to go back to America to get the consent to do anything at all from the birth mother.
Oh, right. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So that's an extra complexity. So it's not enough just to get the parentage order, or the parentage order process will involve the consent of the birth mother.
You're not going to get the parentage order unless you followed the rules. And going overseas for commercial surrogacy is not following the rules. So to get the parentage order, you have to get that overseas. And if they haven't done that and brought the child back, that child is not their child. So that's something else that we need to turn our mind to. Sorry, just because I don't know how long we've gone over time, but just one more thing, if that's okay.
Please, Nicole.
There's just so much, but we had a query come to us at the ethics committee, and a state lawyer was acting for a donor who, we've never heard this before, but he wanted to leave gifts to all his children, his donor children. Now, this caused an issue, so we need to understand, as donors, they cannot find out who these children are. Only the children can find out who their donor parent is. So what we suggested to the lawyer is that upon his death, that the IVF clinic finds out and that they can contact the parent, not the child, because that child might not know that they've got a donor father. So if you ever have that situation, the process should be contacting the clinic, and the clinic will contact the recipient of the sample.
And then the parent decides. Oh my goodness, it's a minefield. Yeah. Wow.
A lot to consider.
Well, we have gone a little bit over, Nicole.
Sorry.
And no, that's fine. It's absolutely fascinating, and you've given me so much food for thought. Was there anything else you wanted to mention in concluding comments?
All my points. Concluding comments. It's just be aware. Just
Yeah.
I think we need some Saleys on this.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. It's such an uncharted kind of unknown area, and it hardly ever comes up in training or at conferences. So I'm so grateful for you generously giving up your time and sharing your insight and expertise. And we get a lot of people watching these after the fact. So are you okay if people do have more questions, if they throw them in the comments, and then we'll do our best to try and answer them. And if something really crazy comes up, maybe we can do another one to answer the question. But is that okay with you, Nicole?
No, that's no problem. If it's something that needs more in depth, we can focus on one topic if you want. But I think I need to be tagged into it to see the comments. So I'll write something.
Oh no, I'll make sure you're tagged in this so you can see it and you should get the notification. And so everybody, Nicole's a great resource on this. If this is coming up in your practice, get in touch with her. As we can see, she's got real depth of expertise on all sides of the process. And yeah, we're so grateful for your time today. Thanks so much, Nicole.
Thank you. It's very, very nice being here. Thanks. And see you later, everybody. And have fun in watching the video.